Chapter 551. How could someone as smart as Fujio not hear the threat in his words? However, it was clear that Teacher Yang had misunderstood her position. She hated being threatened the most. Teacher is right. It's better to be a simple student. When the youth said this, his voice was very slow. Yang Ming didn't know why, but he was always on guard against him. Obviously, the other party was just a high school student. So what if he was popular? When the time came, he would have the final say on the exam papers. Since it's not your board, go back. Also, help me ask who this thing belongs to. All right. Fujio had never been one to reveal her own danger in front of such people. This was hacking. They would always move in the dark. The moment Li Minggran heard that the youngster had been called over by Yang Ming, she rushed to Class D. When she didn't see Fujio, her eyes wavered. Shui Yaoyao saw that she was in a bad condition and reached out to hold her. Minggran, what's wrong? Your Highness Jiao really went to Teacher Yang's office. Li Minggran's face was filled with unprecedented fear. Shui Yaoyao nodded. His hand was pulled away. Yao, we must go to save him. Teacher Yang must have found out the person who appeared there yesterday is... Before Li Minggran could finish her sentence, the youth's light laughter came from behind her. Minggran, why are you here? Li Minggran turned around, heaving a sigh of relief when she saw that the person was fine. Noticing that many students were looking at her, she forced a smile. I am here to look for Yao. If you want to find me, then so be it. If you want to find me, don't use Yao as an excuse. Fujio stuffed one hand into her pocket, wearing her school jacket over her pure white shirt. She reached out and knocked Li Minggran's head, her action so intimate that it seemed like she was doing it for everyone to see. Silly girl. Before Li Minggran could understand what was going on, the young man bent down and held her in his arms. His voice was soft. Are you ready to agree? What? Li Minggran felt her ears going numb, her feet felt like they were stepping on cotton. The youngster's lips curled up into a smile, like the sunlight slanting out. Of course it's to be my girlfriend. Girlfriend. Instantly. The inside and outside of the classroom looked like it had been bombed by an atomic bomb. The girls covered their lips with their hands. The boys banged the wooden table loudly as if they were cheering for Fujio. In short, girlfriend? His Highness Jiao was actually going to get a girlfriend. Moreover, His Highness Jiao had taken the initiative to pursue someone else. Oh no. They could not accept this cruel news. Many girls' hearts were about to break. The male students were very happy. Especially those from Class D, they knew that as long as Fujio was around, they would never be able to stand out. In short, they had already lost all hope in this world that only cared about appearances and not strength. Think about it. When a guy without a girlfriend confesses to a girl, the girl he likes shyly tells him, "It's not that you're not good enough, it's just that I already have someone I like." Who is it? Who was that person? I want to know. I won't tell you. As the girl said so, she glanced at the silver-haired youth sitting behind her. Did she think he was an idiot? Chapter 552. There was also someone who had a girlfriend. Get out of the way. Don't block my way. Hero, why is this video so short? Forget it, since I, His Highness Jiao, am not here anymore, I'll go and play a round of hero myself. Just now, I, His Highness Jiao, should have played the assassin. I play the assassin too. In other words, not only did they have to fight against their girlfriend's Prince Charming, but they also had to fight against the game. What kind of world was this? Now that Fujio had a girlfriend, it was a joyous occasion for the whole world to celebrate. They had to light whips to celebrate. Other than Li Minggran, Shui Yaoyao was the only one who felt different. Because Shui Yaoyao knew very well that His Highness Jiao's true identity wasn't suitable for him to find a girlfriend. Why would His Highness Jiao suddenly ask such a question at this time, and in front of everyone? What did His Highness Jiao want to do? Li Minggran widened her eyes, her pupils wavering. No, I quickly agree. When Fujio said this, she leaned forward, and her voice was so low that only the two of them could hear it. Li Minggran paused, then nodded. Fujio laughed again. There was a hubbub of voices at the scene. Almost on the same day, the school's tieba exploded. Do you know? Do you understand? What? His Highness Jiao has a girlfriend. Don't lie to me, my Jiao rejected a gift from a girl yesterday. It's true, and it was His Highness Jiao who took the initiative to chase that girl. In front of the whole class, he asked that girl if she was willing. My beautiful dream is completely shattered. Am I the only one who thinks His Highness Jiao is too handsome? She actually confessed her love in front of the whole class. If I were that girl, I would definitely faint from happiness. Silently saying this doesn't seem like a big deal. After all, there are many people who have been confessed to by His Highness Jiao. Hearing this, everyone remembered that His Highness Jiao often confessed to others in the past. It was just that this kind of confession was not pleasing, always bringing trouble to others. However, things were different now. She was gentle, patient, and smiled when she asked others if they agreed. His side profile was so handsome that it could almost take one's breath away. When such a photo was posted on Tieba, it simply broke the browsing record of #1 middle school's Tieba. As one of the main characters, Li Minggran didn't know what to do. She understood that the young man would not do this for no reason. It must be for her. Although Li Minggran wasn't clear about the cause and effect, she had this intuition. She was worried that she would drag the youth into this. At that time, Li Minggran lifted her head to look at her. Fu Jiao looked into her eyes and smiled lightly. After a round of jubilation, it was time for 2 people. Oh no, it should be 3 people alone. Together with Shui Yaoyao, they went to the school library. In fact, there weren't many people in the school library. The space was huge and it was near the window. It was also very quiet. Of course, none of this was the reason why Fu Jiao was interested in this place. Most importantly, the location of the library and the floor-to-ceiling window in front of her allowed her to clearly see everyone's activities after they left the teacher's building. Fu Jiao didn't beat around the bush. She looked at the 2 girls in front of her and said, "I'm sorry. Everything happened so suddenly, so you have to pretend to be my girlfriend." "It's this, I understand. Li Minggran didn't look too good these few days. I'm afraid it will affect your popularity. I heard from Yao Yao that you have a lot of fans. If you suddenly announce that you have a girlfriend, will they turn to fans or haters?" "It won't affect me. You don't have to think too much, I'm not playing games for my popularity." Fu Jiao lowered her head as she spoke as though she didn't care at all. Li Minggran turned to Shui Yaoyao. Shui Yaoyao patted her back. "Listen to your Highness Jiao." At that moment, Li Minggran was indescribably touched. She knew how troublesome her situation was and no one would be willing to interfere. For example, some teachers had seen Teacher Yang bring her into the office many times, but because he had connections he would only help her once or twice. He didn't seem to have the intention to make things clear. And now, there was a person who, even if it would affect his own popularity, would still help her, even going so far as to go against her teacher. Li Minggran couldn't describe the feeling in that instant. She suddenly realized that she wasn't alone. Behind her there was still strength to support her. Be it the youngster or her good friend Yao Yao, who was looking at her with concern. "Take a look, do you know the online friend who made a deal with Yang Ming?" Fu Jiao turned the phone, showing Li Minggran the chat history. Li Minggran shook her head, speaking with difficulty. "I don't know Teacher Yang well." With that, Fu Jiao decided to change her approach. "What's the address of the supplementary lessons you mentioned?" A high-class entertainment club." When Li Minggran spoke, she instinctively turned to look at Shui Yaoyao. As expected, her friend's eyes were filled with shock. Li Minggran inhaled deeply before continuing. "Teacher Yang didn't bring me there right from the start, he only brought me there for supplementary lessons for the first few days." Li Minggran took a deep breath before continuing. "Teacher Yang didn't bring me there right from the start. I spent the first 2 to 3 days at the cafe for supplementary lessons. Later on he brought me there saying I wasn't smart." Hearing this, Fu Jiao looked up. "What's the name of that high-class entertainment club?" "Pure Color." Li Minggran added, "It's a famous place for entertainment in Jianghu City. Many people go there, including our school students. However, Teacher Yang and the rest never play on the dance floor, instead they go to the private room." Fu Jiao drew a circle with her pen and wrote down the word, "Pure Color." Then she wrote another word, "Address." "Do you know where Yang Ming lives?" Li Minggran shook her head. "Alright, I got it. As for the address, she would figure it out herself." Fu Jiao closed the notebook in her hands, glancing at Li Minggran. "Let Yao Yao accompany you for the next 2 days, no matter where Yang asks you to go, don't go. Also, tell him that you already have a boyfriend, it wouldn't be good for you to go for extra lessons." "I know." Li Minggran lowered her gaze. She didn't mention what would happen if her mother found out about this. His Highness Jiao had already done enough for her, she had to face the rest herself. Fu Jiao placed the pen down. "Bear with it for another 2 days, everything will get better in 2 days." The final exams were in 2 days' time. The results weren't just important to Li Minggran, it was equally important to Shui Yaoyao and Fu Jiao. The incident on the school's forum was still brewing. There weren't just students here, there were also teachers who could teach. The reason why Fu Jiao would confess in front of everyone was because it was to create a topic for people to post on the forum. This was because, in Mr. Yang's computer preview, the most visited website was the school's Tieba. In order to hunt, she had to lure the target out. Besides, she didn't have much time. Fujio glanced at the watch on her wrist. Things should be brewing soon. After Yang Ming saw the post, he wouldn't be able to sit still. Because the request on the chat log was very clear, it was also very obvious what the word taste meant. This was the only way she could think of to protect Li Mengran while allowing Yang Ming to act quickly. As the supplier, if this Xian heir had a boyfriend, Yang Ming would definitely be in trouble. Fujio was right. In the office, Yang Ming's eyes were filled with anger after seeing the post. He had clearly warned the two of them that one of them should listen to him and the other should do what he was supposed to do. Didn't Li Mengran know? He had controlled her repeatedly, not allowing her to interact with other boys. Once the goods were no longer fresh, the higher-ups wouldn't be able to offer a high price. No way. He had to ask the higher-ups when they had more time. He had to push Li Mengran out in the next few days in case something happened between her and the boy called Fujio. Most importantly, a girl with a boyfriend would be too chaste. If he forced it, something bad might happen. With this thought, Yang Ming picked up the office phone to call Li Mengran's mother. When Mother Li heard that it was Teacher Yang, she hurriedly put down her work. Yang Ming pretended to be hesitant. Madam Li, there's something I'm not sure if I should say. As Li Mengran's teacher, I think it's better for her to communicate with her parents. She's been getting closer to a boy from Class D recently and didn't attend tutoring on time for the past 2 times. Of course, this is just my guess after all. Teacher Yang, you don't have to say any more. Mother Li cut him off, her expression icy. I'll keep an eye on her in the future. Apart from tutoring, I won't allow her to have any more opportunities to socialize. Yang Ming sighed deeply. A parent like Madam Li is the best. She understands the thoughts of teachers like us. Don't be too agitated, it's better to focus on her studies. On the other side of the phone, Mother Li was completely brainwashed and wouldn't think of anything else. She even suspected that Teacher Yang had called because he hadn't given up on Mengran. With this thought, Mother Li was even more determined to discipline her daughter after she returned. On the other hand, after Yang Ming hung up, he picked up the car keys from the drawer and applied for leave from school, claiming that he had a terrible headache and wanted to head back early. Yang Ming was popular, it wasn't difficult to find a substitute teacher. Just like that, Yang Ming left the building. However, he didn't know that his actions had been seen by the young man sitting in the library. Chapter 553. Fujio was still wearing her school uniform. She skateboarded across the field to keep up with Yang Ming's speed. At the very least, she had to leave before Yang Ming left the school gate. Fujio stood there with one hand in her pocket. She glanced at the valiant guard at the school gate, and then at the wall next to her. He resolutely chose the latter. One word: flip. If the Almighty found out, he would probably laugh at her again. Master, please follow the golf in front. Of course, she wouldn't use her skateboard to chase after a car. Fujio hailed a taxi and sat in the front passenger seat. Her eyes never left Yang Ming's direction. When the driver heard this, he immediately became interested. Is it a case? Fujio saw that the middle-aged driver didn't move, so she immediately said, yes, so hurry up and don't let him escape. No problem. The middle-aged driver must have watched too many cop shows. Do you think he has any accomplices nearby? Does he have a gun? Fine, even if he has a gun. If he shoots the tires, I'll hit him. Fujio, uncle, calm down. The middle-aged driver was very serious. I am a person who abhors evil. Fujio agreed. I can see that, but this criminal is different. He has important clues on him, so we can only follow him without alerting him. Oh, so that's how it is. You should have told me earlier. The middle-aged driver turned the steering wheel and turned on his buddy's special voice. I'll ask my buddies to help you attack him from both sides. No matter where he goes, we'll be able to track him. Fujio smiled and immediately gave the driver a thumbs up. There was a terrible traffic jam along the way. After the driver confirmed the exact location of the golf, he didn't care if it was against the rules or not. He opened the door and let Fujio get out to chase after it. Fujio had a skateboard, and once there was a traffic jam, she could make use of the skateboard's advantages. But before he left, he didn't forget to leave 1,000 yuan in the passenger seat. Fujio did some calculations. On the way here, Master had not only run a red light, but he had also violated the rules once. Yang Ming wasn't going back home. Don't ask how Fujio knew. The situation of a certain game was also written. Fujio glanced at the building. While Yang Ming was on the phone in the car, she threw her bag forward and began her disguise. Fujio put on her clothes very quickly. In just a minute, she had changed into another person. Yang Ming was still holding his phone in his hand. He didn't notice that there was another person behind him. It was only when he entered the elevator that he noticed the delivery boy beside him. he said into the phone. Yes, I'll be right there. Okay. Then he hung up and moved back a little. Yang Ming had always looked down on these deliverymen because they always had that kind of smell. He didn't have that kind of smell, but he still didn't want to have too much contact with them. In fact, if there was another elevator, he wouldn't want to stay in this elevator. However, the two of them were on the same floor. Who would have thought that someone on this floor would order takeout? Yang Ming frowned. When the elevator door opened, he strode out. Chapter 554. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. On the top floor of the Qin Corporation building. Most of the Supreme Alliance members were looking at their phones. Is this true? It should be true. It's definitely Little Spade in the photo, and Little Spade looks like he's confessing. I can't believe it, Little Spade is taken just like that. Wait a minute, Little Spade should be the first member of our team to be single, right? What happened to being monks together? I'm unhappy. Yun, who was the only one who didn't speak, his gaze calm as he looked at the content of the post. Fujio was like him, so it was unlikely that he would have a girlfriend. But how could this be explained? Feng Yi came in with the proposal and saw the group of people grinding with their heads down. He arched a brow. Hurry up and practice your hand speed. Aren't you afraid of punishment for being so lazy? If you don't train hard now, you won't be able to attend Pure Colors celebration tonight. Fox, come here. Lin Feng shrugged, bringing Feng Yi to the side. He tapped on the picture. Look, isn't it exciting? Only Supreme Alliance's manager was like that. Feng Yi tried hard to maintain his intellectual image, pushing his gold-rimmed glasses up the bridge of his nose. How strong can it be? Before he could finish his sentence, he snatched Lin Feng's phone and asked, when did this happen? About 3 hours ago. Lin Feng glanced at the photo again. It's a beautiful woman and she looks very pure. In the past, Feng Yi didn't care about the relationships within the team. They didn't even have one here. It was best not to be in a relationship as it would lower their popularity. But it would be different if the other party was Fujio. Because after the masquerade party, Feng Yi really didn't know how Boss Qin felt about Fujio. Don't tell President Qin about this. Lin Feng was confused. Why did you tell Captain? This is a good thing. Little Spade had confessed so many times, but none of them were accepted. This time he was finally accepted, and the other party was a beauty. The comments all said that Little Spade was handsome like a prince. As soon as he finished speaking, a familiar and pleasant voice rang out from behind Feng Yi. However, the voice was a little too cold at this moment. It was so cold that it made one's ears feel heavy. This is indeed a good thing. His tone was too slow and unhurried, which made him feel an indescribable pressure. Instantly, everyone quietened down. All of them raised their heads and looked at the door frame. Qin stood there without any emotion on his face. However, his pure black eyes seemed to have sunk into an icy cold land, faintly emitting light. Lin Feng didn't know why, but he felt cold all over. When Qin reached out and took the phone from his hand, the coldness in his eyes became even more obvious. Before entering, Qin was still thinking about how to slowly turn that person gay. After entering, Lin Feng's words seemed to have been imprinted in his mind. In addition to this photo on the forum, the young man was staring at the girl with a faint smile. The gentleness in the bottom of his eyes was so clear. Chapter 555. Feng Yi's heart skipped a beat as he watched from the side. Lin Feng also felt that his captain's grip was a little too strong. Wait a minute. Should he remind the captain that it was his phone and it was a new one? But before Lin Feng could say anything, Qin lifted his lids, his voice faint. Are you guys so free? So free that you can gossip in the training room? Since that was the case, he had to increase the training intensity. Lin Feng. Was this considered an innocent bystander? Vice President Feng. Qin pointed at the photo, coldness in his eyes. Call this person over. Feng Yi coughed. Call him now. He had just confessed he should still be with that girl. What if he heard her voice? Qin didn't speak, just glancing at him. Feng Yi felt numb, immediately calling Fujio. Inside a certain building. Fujio, who was dressed in a delivery outfit, pressed down on the brim of her cap and was about to continue following Lu Ming. Suddenly, the phone in her pocket rang. Lu Ming, who was about to open the door, turned back immediately. He looked at the delivery boy with his head lowered and frowned. Fujio knew that it would be unnatural not to pick up the call. She held the plastic bag with one hand and took out the phone with the other, placing it by her ear. Is this the Qin Group building? I'll head over immediately after this order is over. Lu Ming wasn't in the mood to listen to a delivery boy's call, but his actions made him feel at ease. He pushed the door open, otherwise he would think that this person was purposely following him. As Lu Ming entered, Fujio hung up. On the other side, Feng Yi was dumbfounded. What did he mean by heading over immediately after this order was over? Qin Mo glanced at Feng Yi's expression. Pass me the phone. Feng Yi heard the busy tone and coughed again. He hung up. He should be busy. Busy? Qin Mo sneered. Busy with a date? Lin Feng couldn't see anything, nodding heavily at the side. It's possible. Instantly. The atmosphere in the training room turned colder. Qin Mo's entire body seemed to be covered by the white snow outside, extremely unapproachable. At this moment, Fujio was facing the second wave of trouble. I was talking about you. A woman in her 30s walked over in high heels. No one ordered takeout here and unauthorized people are not allowed in. What are you doing here? Fujio looked up and exclaimed. Then she slapped her forehead. I remembered the wrong floor. That woman froze when she saw Fujio's face. It was rare to see such a handsome delivery boy. Fujio quickly bowed and apologized. I'm really sorry, madam. This is my first day at work and I'm not familiar with this place. I'm getting a little dizzy as I walk. It's okay, it's okay. The woman was not someone who would deliberately make things difficult for anyone. Moreover, with such a little prince, no one could bear to say anything harsh. Just be careful next time. Hurry up and leave. Yes, yes, yes. Fujio nodded as she walked towards the elevator, not forgetting to smile at others. The woman looked at the slowly closing elevator and muttered to herself, I forgot to take a picture. This is definitely the most handsome delivery boy. But it didn't matter. They were in charge of this anyway. It would be the same to take pictures next time. Chapter 556. In the elevator on the other side of the wall. On the surface, Fujio's posture didn't change, but in fact she had already pressed down on her black ear stud. After seeing this building, she knew that she couldn't use a network attack. Not to mention the fact that any organization's network firewall was especially thorough. Plus, there was a camera at every step. She couldn't hack the system here in a short period of time. Taking out the notebook meant that there would be traces left. Which delivery boy would bring a notebook to work? The police weren't stupid. They would definitely investigate if there was anything suspicious. Moreover, there was the country's most stringent security system here. If there was any problem, someone would definitely call the police. That was why she took the risk to be so close to Lu Ming. Not for anything else but to install a small listening device. The listening device was accidentally installed through the collision in the elevator. Therefore, even if there was a video in the future, the police wouldn't suspect a delivery boy. She was very clear about the police procedure. There was no signal in the elevator. Fujio could only hear the buzzing sound. It was different after exiting the elevator. Although the sound wasn't very loud, it was enough to hear the conversation clearly. Don't worry, no one knows I'm here. It was Lu Ming's voice. The two people in front of her should have already had a conversation. The other party was very vigilant. This was Fujio's impression of him. Why are you in such a hurry? The other person's voice sounded a little impatient. Lu Ming lowered his voice. It's the little girl that Deputy Lu fancied last time. She hasn't been easy to control recently. You haven't touched her yet. Why is she not easy to control? I keep feeling that she doesn't listen to me anymore. She even got a boyfriend. Boyfriend? That person was a little angry after hearing these 3 words. Deputy Lu likes the original, don't you know that? Of course I know that, the younger the better. Lu Ming said, how about this, I'll bring that little girl to pure color today, so that she won't be dirty in the future. That person was still hesitant. Didn't you say that she's a rebellious person, unlike those students who sell themselves? If something happens that she doesn't want to, she might cause trouble in school. That girl is very afraid of her mother. After that, she will have to think about it. If this kind of thing really blows up, it will be bad for our reputation. At that time we can just give her a little more money. As long as we take the money, the nature of this matter will be different. In addition, her grades are still in my hands. What can she do as a student? Nowadays, some high school students would take the initiative to chase after famous brands and sleep with others. Who knew if she had agreed or not? Alright, we'll do as you say. When Fujio heard this, she zipped up her jacket. At this time, she had already left the vicinity of the building and changed back into her school uniform. Fujio was very clear that even if she recorded the entire conversation, it wouldn't be considered as the most critical evidence in court. Without the real video and the corresponding person, the other party might very well say that it was a false accusation. It seemed like she would have to make a trip to pure color. Before that, she had to make a trip back home to prepare everything. The phone in his pocket rang again. Chapter 557. Fujio paused, picking up the call. Hello brother Mo, you aren't in school, where are you? Qin Mo's tone was indiscernible. That was why Fujio was so cautious. Outside. You're with Li Menggran. Qin Mo's tone was heavy. Fujio chuckled. How do you know? What do you think? With that, Qin Mo hung up. At this moment, there was no one around him, the cold expression on his face couldn't be seen. He had never felt this way before. The moment he closed his eyes, the image of the youngster's confession would appear in his mind. What was he doing now? Was he dating? Did he hold the girl's hand or kiss her? That was when he thought of the latter. Qin Mo couldn't control his urge to smoke. That was what he did, pulling open his collar with one hand, a huge pile of cigarette butts in front of him. Amidst the lingering smoke, a pair of deep eyes could be vaguely seen. When Director Huang pushed the door open, the first thing he smelled was the smell of cigarettes. He was slightly surprised since in his impression of the aloof young man, he had never smoked so heavily. But the person in the office chair was still aloof and dignified. Hence, even an experienced detective like Director Huang couldn't tell if he was in a bad mood. I thought you would never contact me again. Director Huang sat opposite Qin Mo. How is it? You agreed to come back? Qin Mo crossed his long legs and seemed distracted. No, I didn't. No. Director Huang took a deep breath. How many years had it been since he had been angered like this? He was called over just to hear a word of no? Then why did you call me over? Director Huang widened his eyes. Qin Mo tilted his head, lighting another cigarette. I'm purely interested in the Z you guys are talking about. I can interfere in this case, but there's one condition. Say it. As long as he could interfere, he would agree to any price. Qin Mo's voice was calm. I won't be appearing, I will send you guys when I need you. Don't tell anyone about my participation. Why? Director Huang had to ask. Qin Mo only said one word, you're a burden. Director Huang. Only this kid dared to disregard the crime squad. Would they hold him back? Would it? Take out the information. Qin Mo sat up straight, but there wasn't any warmth in his eyes. Director Huang arched a brow. What information? You came all the way here because you knew that I would go back. How could you not bring the case files with you? Qin Mo tugged at his collar again. He had to do something to distract himself. Otherwise he would really find the youngster and strip him naked. He would let him know who he belonged to. He knew that it was wrong to think this way. But he just couldn't control it. Director Huang didn't think of such a relationship. He wasn't happy that the kid had seen through everything. However, the case was more important. He opened his briefcase. All the clues we have are in here. Qin Mo lowered his lids to look at the photos and records. Director Huang couldn't help but ask, can you tell me why you didn't return? Chapter 558. Director Huang shook his head. That's my son's game. That's right, the scariest thing when playing hero is encountering a teammate who is in trouble. In a 5v5 match, if there's a primary school student in the team, not only can you not rely on him to kill, you have to protect him at all times, to prevent him from sending himself to the enemy. Qin Mo's gaze wavered. It's the same for solving cases. Director Huang. Wasn't he referring to them as a primary school student? Who exactly did he take his venomous tongue from? There are too many clues and most of them are useless. Qin Mo placed the photo down. If the other party is really Z, you should consider what her initial actions were. She has always been a schemer from the start, everything else is just a cover-up. Director Huang puffed out his beer belly. What do you mean if the culprit is Z? Do you think she isn't? No one knows for sure who the culprit is until the end. Qin Mo took out a pen and drew a question mark. Have you sent anyone to investigate the internet cafes? Director Huang coughed lightly. No. Qin Mo placed the pen down, a hint of a smile on his face. Director Huang felt a little embarrassed. Before I came, I was about to get my men to investigate. You better stop talking. Qin Mo really didn't speak, continuing to flip through the photo casually. Director Huang coughed again. Why don't you tell me what you are investigating, the turnover of staff? Turnover of staff isn't useful. Qin Mo drew another circle. There are thousands of internet cafes in Jianghu City and the cashiers wouldn't remember a person's face. Investigating the turnover of staff isn't just a waste of time, it isn't targeted either. You have to ask if the computers in the internet cafes have malfunctioned recently. For example, when someone was playing a game, the numbers suddenly jumped. It seemed like a virus or sometimes the computer wouldn't be under control. If there is, inform me immediately. Director Huang wasn't dumb enough to ask why they were investigating this. It was obviously a campaign against hackers. But how are you so sure Z would make a move in the internet cafes? Qin Mo glanced up. There's an 80% chance. Firstly, it's Z's personal habits. Secondly, the internet cafes are useful for concealing her true identity. Thirdly, it would exhaust the police's energy. Director Huang. Did all hackers think so much these days? However, that might not be the case. Qin Mo's gaze deepened when he saw the last sentence, "I'm back." Director Huang couldn't keep up with his train of thought. He whipped out his phone. "I'll get them to investigate now." Qin Mo replied. After his analysis, his thoughts returned to his phone. The screen was dark. This also meant that the person had no intention of replying to the message to explain. Explain? Speaking of which, there was nothing much to explain. After all, in that guy's heart he was at most a brother who had a slightly better relationship with him. There was no need for him to explain anything. He even thought of pushing him to someone else. From this, it could be seen how he viewed their relationship. He was well aware of the youth's ability to seduce people. If the youth took the initiative, no one would reject that kind of face and the way the young man smiled. Not to mention a kiss that tasted like candy. Chapter 559. With that, Qin Mo tightened his grip, using his connections for the first time. There's something else. What is it? Director Huang was agitated, thinking it was a new lead. Qin Mo wrote a phone number on the paper. "Help me track this person, I want to know his location." "Suspect." Director Huang's eyes lit up. Qin Mo replied faintly, "No, this is the reward for interfering in the case." Which meant it was a private matter. Director Huang rejected immediately. "No way, I can't locate him like that." "Is that so?" Qin Mo pushed the document forward. "Then I'll have to trouble Director Huang to hire someone else to handle this case." You? Director Huang clenched his teeth. "No, what did he do to you? Why did you have to locate him out of nowhere? Don't you know that's an invasion of privacy?" Qin Mo tapped his fingers on the table, replying leisurely, "It's just a location, it's not enough." Director Huang was speechless. He knew he was serious, but he wasn't sure what the owner of the number had done wrong for him to be targeted. "I'll help you locate him, but you can't do anything to hurt him." Qin Mo's lips curved upwards, but there wasn't much warmth in his eyes. "That depends on what he does." "What do you mean by what?" Director Huang pointed at him. "Don't mess around." Qin Mo extinguished the cigarette in the ashtray, a hint of a smile on his face. "Director Huang, you're thinking too much. He's my team member, what can I do?" At most, he would handcuff him back home, leaving him with no strength to get off the bed. Not to mention confessing his love for her. Beneath the handsome face was possessiveness. It was a pity Director Huang couldn't see through it. But under normal circumstances, he wouldn't treat anyone in such a manner. Honestly, he had only gotten the police to locate the phone number when he was tracking the criminal. Other than the criminal, this was the first time, Fu family's villa. Fu Jio wasn't aware that her location was being tracked. But there was one thing. She was still concerned about the Almighty's call. She had always known that the Almighty wasn't an easy opponent. Therefore, from the very beginning, he had foreshadowed her involvement in this matter. That was to become Li Mingran's boyfriend. Even if one day the Almighty found out that she was the one who did it. She also had an excuse to say that it was because the other party was her girlfriend, and that she had to do it out of anger. This was the only way to hide her identity as Z. Fu Jio looked at herself in the mirror. She was wearing a girl's school uniform with a knee-length skirt and a white blouse. Everything about her looked youthful. The bad thing was that Fu Jio's looks were too devilish, and she couldn't be pure even if she wanted to. But at least she had a layer of disguise that could blend in. 6:40. It would take about an hour to reach pure color from here. And this was under the condition that there was no traffic jam. In other words, she would be able to reach pure color at around 8 o'clock. Fu Jio looked up, and her slender fingers tied a bow in front of her collar. There was a small infrared camera hidden in the bow. She confirmed the time again, and before she left, she bound all the webcast platform accounts that were not broadcasting live at this time. Chapter 560. A video shot under abnormal circumstances, no matter how clear it was, would be treated as invalid evidence in a lawsuit. Besides, Fu Jio already knew who she was up against this time. She wouldn't go to court. Wouldn't it be a joke for a hacker like her to go to court? She wasn't afraid of being rich, but she was afraid of being rich and powerful. Fu Jio didn't deny the existence of the light. But in this world there were too many distortions. The younger ones could change their faces and pretend to be wronged after scolding others. Those with power looked dignified, but in reality no one knew what they were. She couldn't give the other party a chance to retaliate. If that happened, Li Mingran's reputation would be tarnished. Yang Ming was smart. He knew that even if he was exposed he would still have a way to retaliate. That was probably how it was in China. If a girl was bullied, there would always be people who would jump out and say that there was something wrong with the girl's behavior. What was more frightening was that according to the statistics, a large portion of those who blamed the girl were women. They would use words that you wouldn't be able to imagine. For example, ab*tc. Fujio had never been kind. She was well aware of human nature. Because of that, she had jumped out at the first opportunity to give Li Menggran the identity of her girlfriend. That way, after the incident, at least no one would accuse Li Menggran of doing it for money. Because her boyfriend wasn't just handsome, he was also rich. At this thought, Fujio lifted her head and glanced at the rear mirror. She couldn't be handsome anymore, she had to be beautiful. The statistics started. It wasn't that easy to infiltrate the livestream platform. On the contrary, because it was online, there were many loopholes. This gave Fujio a certain degree of convenience. A recording was broadcasted on over 10 livestream platforms. Moreover, the accounts that were tied to them were slightly famous streamers. Hence, after the recording was broadcasted, a wave of discussion broke out. F***ck, did I enter the wrong channel? No, this is my goddess livestream room, why isn't there a recording? And it's a recording of 2 men. Previous poster, don't speak, listen carefully. F***ck. Disgusting. Where did this recording come from? Who are they talking about? That person mentioned the girl and the results? He said that he controlled the other party's results. This is clearly something that only a teacher can do. Damn it, he's a scum. Tell me, who is he? I'm going to kill him. And the result? What was the result? He only released half of it. Will something happen to the girl? After listening to this recording, I think I need to ask my sister if she has been bullied at school recently. I won't let my daughter only care about results in the future. Wait a minute, look at the comments on the platform. If you want to know more, come to room 009 at 8 p.m. sharp. Everyone would see the last sentence after listening to the recording. That night, people really couldn't even eat anymore. After listening, he went to room 009. All of a sudden, the number of visitors on the platform reached a new height, and it was still increasing. Because there were only 20 minutes left before the live broadcast. In this short period of 20 minutes, not to mention that the person who said these words did not react, even the police would not notice it. Chapter 561. At the same time. In the Qin Group's building, Director Huang, who was about to leave, received a call. Livestream. His brows furrowed tightly. It's really strange. Immediately find out where the person sent this message. Also, send the address of the person's livestream to my phone. Send it immediately. Yes. After the person on the other side finished speaking, he hung up. Director Huang turned towards Qin Imo. I'm afraid before we find Z, there's something I need your help with. Qin Imo arched a brow. Director Huang lowered his voice. An hour ago, someone posted a voice message on the livestream. Listen to it. As he spoke, he pressed his cell phone. Qin Imo listened to the voice message, his side profile still handsome. Play it again. Even though Director Huang was doubtful of his decision, he still did as he was told. Stop. Qin Imo pressed his left hand on the table and stood up. If I were you, I would check the surnames of all the deputies and deputy directors in Jianghu City. Lock on to the one with the surname Liu and see how many of them are there. After that, check their schedule for today. Director Huang was instantly enlightened. In the voice message, that person called the other party Deputy Liu. Qin Mo's voice was calm, but it was lethal. Deputy Liu is only used in the officialdom. Director Huang felt that his trip wasn't in vain. The youngster in front of him was born to do this. Be it in the past or now, as long as he was around, he would solve cases quickly. Hence, the rate of solving cases in Jianghu City was extremely high. But who could have imagined that he would be a high school student back then? Director Huang was excited. He immediately dialed his subordinate's number. But on the other end, Qin Mo's voice didn't change. It's too late. What? Director Huang turned, arching a brow. Qin Imo listened to the voice message, opening his silver business laptop to head to the live stream room. The number of people in the room was unprecedented. Qin Imo glanced at the netizens, glancing up. There's less than 20 minutes left. By the time you find out, the live stream might have ended. Then what should we do? Director Huang might be experienced, but he hasn't been in contact with such cases. Qin Imo was different. He pointed at the screen, his gaze calm. Go downstairs and get in the car. Wait for the live broadcast to start. The various police stations will be ready. Open up a dedicated lane and race all the way to the end. This is the most time-saving method. All right. I'll get them to stand by. Director Huang was starting to panic. It was hard not to pay attention to such a voice message. No one had the guts to fabricate such a thing. This was because if the content was false, the publisher would face imprisonment of more than 5 years. Therefore, this was not a topic that anyone was stirring up. Could very well be true. The tricky part was whether it was real or not. If the content of this voice message was true, this would be a case of student trafficking, and the person involved would not have a simple background. Director Huang might be a little greedy, but he would never do something that crossed the line. Just who was it, such a beast? Chapter 562. The person who posted this isn't a newbie. Qin Mo's voice came over again. The police probably haven't found out who posted this. Director Huang coughed. Everyone is still working hard on this. Working hard until the matter is over? Qin Mo lifted the corner of his lips and pressed the internal line in the office. Call Fatty over, it's not training. Tell him that it's something he's most interested in, tracking hackers. Hackers? Director Huang's eyes widened when he heard that word. Did you just say hackers? Within a day, more than 30 famous online platforms broadcasted this voice recording at the same time. Other than hackers, no one would be able to do that. Qin Mo stood up as he spoke, his long fingers buttoning his coat. He exuded an aura of abstinence from the inside out. 7:45 p.m. There were only 15 minutes left before the live broadcast would begin. Fujio glanced at the time on her watch once more. She lifted her lids towards the dazzling building. Countless celebrities and luxury cars drove in slowly. No one noticed that there was a 24-hour convenience store opposite Pure Color with a great view. If someone took a closer look, they would definitely see that in the dining area near the window, there was an ordinary Odin beside a silver-white Apple laptop. The person sitting in front of the laptop had her face covered. Her fingers were on the keyboard, typing furiously. The crisp sound of the keyboard was very emotional. It seemed like she was playing a game. But in reality, one look at her screen and they would know that she wasn't playing a game. She wasn't playing a game. Strings of code danced in her black pupils, indicating that this was a cyber attack. A place like Pure Color might seem to have a good security system, but the internet was very weak. After all, the more people used the internet, the more loopholes there would be. Especially in the surveillance room, it was easy to find loopholes. Fujio's fingers moved quickly. In less than 3 minutes, the virus was implanted into the system. Of course, she needed to continue the activation of the virus. The laptop couldn't be carried around. But the tablet could. The laptop would be the host and would be left here to conduct the live broadcast. After Fujio was done, she stood up and ordered another order of Odin. She also asked the cashier where the washroom was. The goal was to give the impression that she hadn't left, to keep the cashier from touching her notebook. The cashier felt that Fujio looked familiar, but that was all. It was probably because Fujio was too beautiful, especially when she smiled. Her eyes were like crescent moons. Bathroom? The bathroom is just behind here. Turn left after you go out. Thank you. Fujio curled her lips again. After she walked out, she didn't turn left. Instead, she walked straight towards Pure Color. There were only 5 minutes left before the live broadcast officially began. However, she couldn't go in by herself. She was waiting for Lu Ming, the bait. Time passed little by little. Lu Ming looked at the endless stream of cars in front of him and glanced at the person in the passenger seat. We can't drive in anymore. Get out from here. Chapter 563. Before she left, her mother's words were still echoing in her ears. Don't think that I don't know what you've been doing in school. Your grades have already started to drop. You can't only be happy when you get the last place in your exams. Who is your boyfriend? I'm going to his house and ask his mother. He has to take responsibility for seducing my daughter. Fine, you're not going to call? If you're not going to call, you can just follow Teacher Lu. You can choose between the two. I consider myself an open-minded parent, and I also understand that children who have entered puberty are curious about everything, so they want to fall in love. But look at yourself. You don't even want to go to cram school just to fall in love? Where did you put all the effort your father and I put into you? Li Mingran's words were stuck in her throat. To ensure that she didn't fall behind, her family didn't forget to teach her piano while studying. Every day, her father would work overtime until 9 at night. Almost the entire family's efforts were spent on her. The best products to nourish her brain, the best one-to-one English lessons, and the best dressing. It was all for her to enter a good university in a stable state. At times, this stubbornness seemed to seep into her bones. Hence, her mother had always been obedient to her teacher. Even in the end, she would still thank him profusely. No matter how much she cried and refused to go. Her mother still opened the car door and pushed her in. The moment she sat down, Li Minggran felt despair. She wanted to ask for help. But the price of that would be bringing trouble to the youngster. He was the hottest new esports player in the country, be it his results or future, he was like a shining light. If her mother caused a ruckus in school, not only would the youngster's reputation be tarnished, even his results would be affected. The moment he failed, he wouldn't be able to participate in the National League. Such a rule was right in front of her. She couldn't be that selfish. Because Li Minggran was clear that the National League wasn't just the youngster's dream, it was Yao Yao's. Her best friend's eyes lit up when she said those words. That was good. Li Minggran thought as she tightened her grip on the blade in her hands. She would do as that person said on the internet. This bunch of people would probably go to hell. Li Minggran lowered her head. Lu Ming couldn't see the girl's expression, so he didn't notice the hatred in her eyes. Fu Jiao, who had been hiding in the darkness, paused when she caught sight of Li Minggran, returning to her original position. The worst had happened. Fu Jiao's eyes darkened. She knew that Li Minggran wouldn't agree to appear here, which meant that she had resisted and failed. If there were acquaintances around, she would have to be careful not to expose her face too obviously. But these were small matters. The most important thing was that Li Minggran could not be injured. It seemed like she had to speed up. Fu Jiao slid her finger across the tablet, and the virus program was activated. All the cameras turned around at the same time. No one knew. The security guard who went to the washroom did not see the change of position of the camera. Just like that, Fu Jiao, who was dressed like a student, followed Lu Ming into pure color while ensuring that no images would be left behind. At the same time, that scene was broadcasted live on the internet. Chapter 564. The eyes of the netizens who were looking forward to it lit up. The comments flooded the screen. Video? There's a video? Wait a minute, where is this? Why does it look so familiar? I can only say this is a nightclub. F***CK. I remember now, this is pure color. There's no mistaking it, this is pure color. Pure color? Fatty glanced sideways at Captain, who was sitting beside him. Chinamo crossed his legs and turned his face to the side. His eyes were pitch black and his overly fair skin made him look like a vampire aristocrat. Especially when he gave the order, that lazy and cold aura was even more prominent. Begin the attack, lock onto the opponent. Yes. Fatty was genuinely excited, he had never been like this in a car. How should he put it, MMH? His fingers were trembling. Director Huang glanced at the back of the car. He's fine. He'll get motion sickness at most. Qin Mo's voice wasn't faint. Locking onto the IP address of the livestream on the road would save them a lot of time. The sound of the keyboard clattered. At this moment, Qin Mo glanced down at his phone. He still hadn't replied. 3 minutes into the livestream, the number of viewers had already exceeded 10 million. No one knew how the livestream had managed to capture these images. But from the video they could see that the person was walking forward. Pure color would enter the carnival stage at night. As she walked around the lobby, there were many beautiful girls, many of whom looked very young. Fu Jiao walked casually, just like the countless people who came to have fun. But no one could tell that she had a camera on her black bow tie. In fact, entering such a nightclub required a full-body scan. But Lu Ming didn't. Hence, when Fu Jiao paused, she narrowed her eyes. Fortunately, she didn't bring anything, so she passed quickly. But this way there was still a distance between them. Lu Ming didn't stop at the lobby. Instead, he walked to the corridor and seemed to make a call. Fu Jiao was just about to walk forward when she heard a familiar voice. F***CK, there are still as many people here as usual. It seems like there's hope for us monks to get rid of our single status. It was Lin Feng. Fu Jiao's eyes widened. She suddenly moved to the side and avoided those people who were walking towards her. It wasn't just Lin Feng, there was also Yunhu, Feng Shang and the others. Almost all the Supreme Alliance members were there. Only then did Fu Jiao remember that Manager Feng had said before that he would take them to pure color to have some fun so that they could prepare for the national competition in the future. If that's the case, does that mean the Almighty is also here? Fu Jiao's legs were still moving forward, but her mind was filled with many thoughts. Firstly, she couldn't let anyone in Supreme Alliance see her. Secondly, she had to avoid the Almighty. Of course, this was not the main point. The most important thing was the bodyguards in front. It was obvious that the other side of the corridor was not a place ordinary people could enter. Li Minggran's back was right in front of him. Fu Jiao narrowed her eyes and silently counted to 15 before approaching the corridor. Miss, this place does not allow unauthorized people to enter. Please leave. Fu Jiao looked like she was scared and she said in a soft voice, the teacher asked me to come here for tutoring. I must have made a mistake. I'll go somewhere else. Chapter 565. Fu Jiao turned around slowly, but her face was still a little low. But the more she was like this, the more she matched her current identity as a pure young girl. But looking at her school uniform, the corners of Yang Ming's mouth curled up. Anyway, sending one in was the same as sending two in, and he could still make more money. Vice Lu wasn't the only one inside, there was another one as well, and they both liked to be pure. Student, this is indeed the place for supplementary lessons. Yang Ming showed unprecedented enthusiasm. Fu Jiao didn't follow him immediately. Instead, she pretended to look around nervously. But this doesn't look like a place for supplementary lessons, and my teacher isn't here. Your teacher and I are friends. Yang Ming already knew that he wasn't the only provider in Jiang City, there were other teachers doing the same. Those people were different from them, and they were just a blind cat running into a dead mouse, and if they could find a dumb student, it would be one. Obviously, Fu Jiao had become a dumb student in Yang Ming's eyes. Your teacher is waiting in the room in front. He said he has students coming over today. Yang Ming continued, your teacher's surname is Li, right? He's wearing a pair of glasses and he's from number 13 middle. Very good, another accomplice was caught. In fact, Fu Jiao didn't know there was such a person with the surname Li before she came. Since the other party gave her one, she naturally had to accept it calmly. You know Teacher Li? Fu Jiao tried to make her voice sound timid. Of course. Yang Ming laughed. We are in the same profession. Let's go, I'll bring you in. Fu Jiao pretended to hesitate for a while, and then she nodded. Yang Ming pushed his glasses up, turned around and smiled wantonly. She was really dumb. And at this moment, the people who were watching the live broadcast were all fired up. Ah, don't let him go. F***, know who's in pure color? Go and save the damsel in distress. The people in pure color won't be watching the live broadcast, right? They're still playing. I said don't worry. Think about it, when the blogger broadcasted this, she knew who the other party was. This is obviously a clever disguise to infiltrate the enemy's inner circle. Now that you mention it, that's indeed the case. But even so, you can hear how young the blogger's voice is. She's still a little girl. How can she face those beasts? No, I'm going to pure color now. Not only could the netizens watch the live stream, but Qin Mo could as well. Then he seemed to have thought of something, his lips curved up. Very smart. What's very smart? Director Huang was still anxious. Why is there such a traffic jam? Police officers near pure color, go in immediately. If you don't have a search warrant, you can get one later. Who are you afraid of stopping you? The Jiang family? Director Huang tilted his head to look at the person beside him when he heard the surname. Qin Mo's voice was calm. Let them explain the situation and enter. The Jiangs aren't people who only look at benefits. Director Huang nodded, wiping his sweat. With such a huge incident, his heart was about to stop. By the way, what did you just say about being smart? Director Huang isn't senile, he knows that every word this kid says is useful. Chapter 566. Director Huang wasn't stupid. She felt that if she didn't do that, the culprit might use his identity to escape punishment or betray us like what happened in the recording. In the end, the female students would be the ones who wouldn't be treated fairly. Sai, this hacker doesn't trust us, how could we allow these beasts to betray us? That's what I thought. Qin Mo glanced over, his voice calm. The most direct way is that she wanted to save someone. Moreover, she knew that if she released the news, it would attract the attention of the police. By then she wouldn't need to do anything, the police would take the initiative to arrest her. Perhaps they would arrest her, but before the police arrived, she had the ability to escape. Director Huang's jaw dropped. You're saying that the police are under her orders? Qin Mo didn't reply, a silent agreement. Director Huang fumed. This hacker is too. We'll talk after we find her. Qin Mo glanced at Fatty beside him. How's the investigation going? Fatty looked up with a serious expression. I suspect that there are 2 people involved in this operation. Leader, look, this is the IP address that I've locked onto. It's clearly outside of pure color, but the blogger is inside pure color. That's weird. It is a little strange. Qin Mo glanced at the heavy traffic in front of him. His handsome face tilted sideways, not knowing what he was thinking. But at this moment, the 2 people in the room weren't aware of what was happening. When they saw Li Menggran, they couldn't hold it in any longer. Just as they were about to make a move, Yang Ming pushed in another person. With a loud bang, the wooden door behind her slammed shut. Lowering her lids, Li Menggran was holding onto a blade, threatening the 2 of them. If you come any closer, I'll kill you. Old Lu, deal with that one, I want to have a good talk with my little beauty. The older one pounced towards Fu Jio with a lecherous expression. What these two people didn't know was that their current state had been completely displayed on the live streaming platform. Outside pure color. Chinemo opened the car door, walking out. He scanned the surroundings, glancing past the convenience store before returning, his deep gaze dimming. Director Huang, you guys head in first, I'll take a look at the opposite side. Since they were already at pure color, Director Huang couldn't care less as he charged in. With one hand in his pocket, he pushed open the glass door of the convenience store with the other. No matter what happened, he would always be nonchalant. Welcome. The shop assistant's voice rang out. Then he looked at the person who had just arrived and his eyes lit up. What was going on today? If it wasn't a beauty, then it was a handsome guy. Chinmo's eyes were calm. The more he was like this, the more mysterious he seemed. When he saw the small business notebook on the dining table, his gaze paused. He walked over and asked in a low voice, "Where is the lady who was sitting here just now?" "So you're here to look for someone." The clerk suddenly understood. "She went to the bathroom for a while. She'll probably be back soon." Washroom. Chinemo lifted the corners of his lips. With such a good view, he was directly facing pure color. The computer was clearly running, but it was completely black. It was obvious that it was doing something. Since the host was here. Chapter 567. As for the people inside, they would disappear when the police entered. Therefore it was best to stay here and wait for the wind to blow. "Sir?" The shop assistant stood at the side, puzzled. Chinemo turned around, his handsome side profile extremely abstinent. "Please give me a cup of Americano." "Okay, right away." It turned out that he was really looking for someone. He had thought that the other party wanted to do something by touching the notebook. If Director Huang were to find out that they were dashing forward while a certain someone was sitting elegantly by the window of the convenience store drinking coffee, he would definitely explode in anger. Inside pure color, Yang Ming, who had closed the door, felt that the girl he had pushed into looked somewhat familiar when she looked up. But he couldn't tell where he had seen it. Strange. She's so pretty. I should have an impression of her. Yang Ming, who was outside the private room, was still talking to himself. Listening to the flirtatious sounds inside, he thought that as long as he settled this deal, he would have a chance to rise in the future. It was just that Li Minggran was a little fierce. No matter how fierce she was, after today the rice would be cooked. As for the other one, he didn't have to worry at all. One look and he could tell that he didn't have a mind of his own and wouldn't cause any trouble. Fujio didn't have her own opinions? The sentence sounded like a joke. She turned to the side to avoid the middle-aged man, her fingers on the ground as she lowered her head. Indeed, she looked weak, but in reality she was doing this so the camera wouldn't capture Li Minggran's face, only capturing the two men. "I must have come to the wrong place, you must be mistaken. I'm here for tuition, that man lied to me, he's a teacher." "Baby, he is indeed a teacher." The middle-aged man tilted his head and was ready to pounce again. "You didn't go the wrong way. If you want to study, I can teach you." Li Minggran didn't expect another victim to appear. She had already thought it through. Even if she had to die, she would not let them have their way. But now, the girl without a knife had obviously become a lamb for them to slaughter. What to do? What should she do? Li Minggran's hands were trembling as she threw the fruit platter over. With a pale face, she shouted at the man who was about to pounce on Fujio. "Aren't you afraid of retribution for your actions?" "Retribution?" The man laughed and said, "Who dares to give us retribution? Little baby, you don't usually watch the news, do you? Don't worry, uncle will dote on you." Li Minggran retreated frantically. The dagger in his palm was stained with blood. She had originally thought that there was no hope this time. However, in the next second. There was a loud bang. The man who was about to approach her was kicked to the ground. Li Minggran froze, sitting on the ground in a daze. She watched as the other girl, who was originally trembling in fear, tore off her bow tie, using her left hand to support herself from the ground. She leapt up, her left hand grabbing the wine bottle by the side. Using the strength of her arm, she flung it at the man's head. Crack. Wine filled the air. The man couldn't withstand the impact at all. He fainted and couldn't find his bearings. When the other man saw this, his eyes widened in disbelief. His first reaction was to call someone in. Chapter 568. It was then that Li Minggran realized the girl's voice had changed. It wasn't weak anymore, it was cold and sinister, like a devilish beauty that had finally revealed her true self. The higher one's position, the more afraid they were of death. The man glanced sideways at the glass bottle, his face turning pale, his lips trembling. "I won't scream. Open the door for me." Li Minggran didn't know those 3 words were directed at her at the start. The girl sighed softly. Miss Li. Li Minggran snapped back to her senses, watching the girl's back view. The girl didn't turn back, her voice much gentler. Do you still have the strength to move? MMH. Li Minggran saw the man lying on the floor, seemingly about to wake up. She immediately stood up, her fingers fiddling with the door lock, hoping that she could move faster. Kacha. The door finally opened. Li Minggran turned, her eyes glistening as she looked at the person standing with her back facing the light. The girl didn't lift her lids, only saying, "Go out first, the police should be here, you'll be fine." "What about you?" Li Minggran's heart was still trembling. The girl replied calmly, "I'll cover the rear." Li Minggran could only nod, but the moment she stepped out of the wooden door, she heard a loud crack behind her. What? Li Minggran was in a daze. She was worried about the girl behind the door. Her first reaction was to call the police. At this time, Yang Ming, who was standing at the other end of the corridor, was still smoking happily. However, he suddenly saw a large wave of police officers walking straight towards him. The bodyguard beside him blocked them, speaking to the police. "Deputy Liu and Chief Zhang are inside. Even if you have a mission, wait for their meeting. Don't you know where you are, coming here to investigate?" Yang Ming took a puff, his eyes devoid of fear. With the 2 of them around, even if the police arrived, it wouldn't be of much use. Wasn't it the same in the past? Someone had reported them. It was just a gesture of sending the police. However, this time Yang Ming was wrong. Director Huang took a step forward, his voice heavy. "Meeting? I think it's more like a crime. Investigate, no matter who it is, bring them back to the station first." "You?" The 2 bodyguards still wanted to say something. In the next second, he was pressed to the ground by 4 men who had their arms folded. Yang Ming was dumbfounded with the cigarette in his mouth. "This is the teacher who brought them in." Fatty held the notebook in one hand and pointed at Yang Ming with the other. When Yang Ming heard this, his face turned pale. The police moved too quickly. It was so fast that Yang Ming didn't even know how their secret transaction was discovered. Li Minggran ran over, tears in her eyes. "Hurry, she's still inside, that girl is still inside." Director Huang and Fatty exchanged glances, gesturing for the manager to open the door. This is locked." The manager was sweating profusely. Director Huang couldn't care less. "Kick the door down." The 2 policemen looked at each other, and with 2 thuds, a loud clang was heard. The door opened. There were lights on inside. Chapter 569. Do. The notebook in Fatty's hand emitted a sound, indicating that he had locked onto his target. He followed the sound and saw a black bow tie sitting quietly on the coffee table. That kind of bow tie was very common, but because of its position, it was very strange. Fatty extended his hand and touched the item inside. A look of great interest appeared on his face. "This is actually a small camera. Let's not worry about that for now. What about the illegal customers? Director Huang wants to arrest them as well, otherwise he wouldn't be able to explain himself when he closes the case." Fatty pointed at the tablet. "It's the tablet behind the bow tie. As for where the person is, you'll have to ask those 2 beasts." Deputy Liu and Chief Zhang's mouths were gagged as they stared upwards. Director Huang reached out to remove their ties. "Where are they? Why are you guys so slow?" Deputy Liu's face darkened. "The criminal has already escaped and someone broke in to threaten us. He even did such a despicable thing. Is this the police's ability to handle cases?" Chief Zhang's gaze was stern. "Bring our clothes over first. I think the 2 of you are mistaken." Fatty pursed his lips and said, "We are here to arrest you, not some other criminal." Director Huang had wanted to ask about the hacker's whereabouts, but who knew that the 2 scum would only berate the police's ability. Now that he had missed the best opportunity, he could only turn to ask Li Minggran, "Is the girl really in this room?" Li Minggran looked at the scene in a daze. Before she came out, that person was still there, in front of the computer. Countless netizens looked at the scene in front of them. The screen went black for 3 minutes. But no one left. Then the scene showed the police rushing in. This was much more exciting than watching a movie. Of course, when he saw that the 2 of them wanted to refute him again. The comments once again swept through the entire live streaming platform. "I won't say anything else. I request the higher-ups to investigate such a person. If these 2 people are not sentenced, I will never believe in the saying that good people will be rewarded and bad people will be punished. Don't forget that he has an identity. So what if you have an identity? Let the relevant departments see the power of the masses. I say, do you guys have nothing better to do? What does that have to do with you? Maybe that girl did it willingly. The blogger is also interesting. Why do you care about other people's privacy? Trash get lost. Did you watch the live broadcast? Don't spout nonsense. That child is risking her life with a knife. I don't care what others do, but I'm a mother. This kind of teacher and deputy chief has to be dealt with. I'm not a noble person, but at the very least, I don't want my daughter to experience such a thing. It's the same for me. Although I'm not married yet, as a woman, I want to ask, on what basis can you say that the woman was willing when such a thing happened? Is this the focus now? Shouldn't those bastards be punished? Being despicable is always the passport of the despicable. Seeing the words of the person who scolded me, I just want to say one thing. You are the same as those bastards. Where's the blogger? Where's the blogger? What's next? We have to see the fate of these two beasts with our own eyes before we can sleep well. Chapter 570. Director Huang facepalmed. That's right, the ceiling. But how were they going to get up? Director Huang lifted his lids to look above him. Qin Mo frowned as though he was disgusted by the coffee. Forget it if you can't get up. Are you doubting my ability again? Brat. I'll climb up for you to see. Wait, where are you? How do you know about our situation? Director Huang had so many questions that Qin Mo wasn't interested in answering. He hung up the phone, his other hand supporting his face, his fingertips tapping on the table as he narrowed his eyes. Come on. Let me see who you are. In pure color, the guests on the dance floor didn't know what was happening when a wave of police officers barged in. Then they started knocking on the ceiling, creating a chaotic scene. Fatty was also holding a notebook in his hand. His appearance was very eye-catching. Hence, Lin Feng spotted him from afar, rushing over to pat his shoulder. Fatty, didn't Captain ask for you? Why are you here? It's a long story. Fatty liked to imitate ancient people. It's about Yun, who didn't wait for his long speech. His gaze deepened. Did Captain come along? Ah, that's right. Fatty hollered. Captain is waiting for my report at the supermarket opposite. Lin Feng arched a brow. The supermarket opposite? Let's go, we can't continue with the current situation, let's go see Captain. But that's weird, didn't Captain say he wasn't coming? It wasn't easy for the Supreme Alliance members to leave because there were still police checking their IDs. And at this moment, at the corner of the first floor of Pure Color, there was a commotion. Those who didn't know better would think it was a mouse. But if they listened carefully, they would realize the commotion was coming from the ceiling. After commotion, a person jumped down from the air vent. It wasn't anyone else but Fujio. She was still in her white shirt and school uniform, her messy hair accentuating her beauty. Phew, it's been a long time since I walked through such a tunnel, it's so stuffy. Fujio reached out and brushed her sleeves, but when she glanced sideways, she saw a few policemen checking the other vents. Needless to say, they were definitely here to investigate her. Fujio frowned, turned around quickly and walked to the elevator. They actually guessed that I would come out from the vent. I didn't expect the Jiangxing police to be so smart. Fujio didn't say what she was thinking. She was glad that she was fast enough to escape before the police started investigating. Right now, she was just like an ordinary customer. She was familiar with the procedure, so she knew that the police would be waiting at the main entrance, so she wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, she stayed in the elevator and went straight to the parking lot in the basement. There was already a skateboard in the parking lot. Fujio used her long and slender left leg to support herself, and just like that, under the cover of darkness, no one noticed. More and more police cars arrived at the scene. Other than the first time, there were also the media and the masses attracted by the live broadcast. Pure Color had never had a day like today. There were people both inside and outside. The car was stuck in a traffic jam. Chapter 571. The crowd didn't seem to be afraid of the cold as they stood outside. The smog created a majestic scene. Undoubtedly, such a scene was beneficial for her escape. Fujio smiled, sliding the skateboard into the bushes. She stuffed her hands into the pockets of her jacket and glanced at the 24-hour convenience store across the street. Then she strolled over. Even if the police passed by her, they wouldn't suspect a person who went shopping. Director Huang wouldn't have expected that while they were still searching, the culprit had already left Pure Color. In the end, Director Huang had no choice but to call a certain someone. The people below said there was nothing at the air vent. I've searched the entire first floor and didn't find anyone suspicious. Qin Mo held onto his phone, his voice indifferent. Also, you wouldn't be able to find anything if you searched the first floor. The culprit would have used the underground car park, it's convenient for concealment and entry. Director Huang gritted his teeth. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I'm in a bad mood because you didn't do anything for me. Qin Mo's fingers paused, his tone still indifferent. I have something to do, I'm hanging up. Something? Other than the case, what else could he be busy with? Could it be that the kid had discovered something? Director Huang had to admit that he had quick reflexes in certain areas. Chinamo had indeed discovered something. There was something wrong with the person who didn't join in the fun. Instead, he walked against the traffic. Chinamo raised his hand, keeping his silvery white phone before standing up. The night sky outside was sinking bit by bit. Pure colors surroundings seemed to have been illuminated by the headlights. The Supreme Alliance members were still queuing up for inspection. Lin Feng was helpless, but he knew he had to cooperate with the investigation. Let them go. It was Wu Zhen. She was dressed in a police uniform, striding in with a police cap on her head. Her gaze swept across Lin Feng and the rest. I know all of them, there won't be a problem. The other policeman was still hesitant. But Director Huang said, the live stream host is a girl. Look at them, which one of them is a girl? Wu Zhen interrupted her colleague. The policeman didn't say anything. He just nodded and let Lin Feng and the others walk over. Lin Feng was still puzzled. He wasn't familiar with this female officer, so why was she speaking up for them? Before he could finish his thought, he heard Wu Zhen ask Fatty, Brother Mo is also participating in this activity, right? Otherwise, the police wouldn't have broken into pure color so quickly. Fatty did not know how to lie, so he shifted his gaze to the left. Wu Zhen was smart and broke into a smile. I was the one who suggested that he return to the crime squad when I went to the Qin family. Where is he now? Fatty desperately told himself not to look in the direction of the convenience store. But things were going against her will. She couldn't control her gaze and looked to the left. At first, Wu Zhen didn't know he was looking at the convenience store because there were too many people and cars outside. Even the entrance of the convenience store was crowded. After a few seconds, she came back to her senses and smiled. Is he in the convenience store across the street? Oh no. He was really a troublemaker. Fatty slapped his head heavily. Chapter 572. Welcome. The shop assistant's voice rang out again. It had to be said that after climbing the ceiling and hearing such a gentle laughter, anyone's mood would improve. Fujio looked up and smiled at the shop assistant. Then she walked back to her previous seat. She glanced at the table. No one had touched her things. Very good, madam. At this moment, the shop assistant smiled and said, This is for you. It was a cup of Odin, still warm. Fujio smiled faintly and raised her eyebrows. You remembered wrong. Before I went to the toilet, you already gave me a cup of Odin. No, this is not that cup. The shop assistant quickly explained, This cup was ordered by your friend. Friend? When Fujio heard that word, her back suddenly trembled, and only one word appeared in her mind. Oh. This friend of yours has been waiting for you for a long time. The shop assistant continued and said in confusion, He said that you should be hungry after climbing the ceiling. Fujio heard that and suddenly narrowed her eyes. Just at this moment, another voice came from behind her. It was deep and magnetic like an explosion, but it made one's scalp tingle unconsciously. Why didn't you take it? Or am I wrong? You don't like Odin. Qin Mo was still holding the cup of coffee in his hand, but he deliberately stood in the position that was blocked by the snack cabinet. Now that he walked out, he looked at the back of the girl in front of him and said slowly, Mr. Vlogger. There was no need to turn back. Fujio also knew who that person was. No wonder the police knew that she would come out from the vent. If all this was directed by the Almighty, then there was nothing more to say. Fujio heard the footsteps behind her getting closer and closer. Finally, she decided to strike first. Brother Mo, it's me. Qin Mo's footsteps suddenly stopped. He looked at the most familiar face and the pair of dark eyes in front of him. The shards of light seemed to fall into the other person's eyes, which were so beautiful that nothing could compare with them. It was him. It was actually him. Actually, it wasn't that Qin Mo didn't think of the youngster. But more than that, he thought that this case was related to Z. Was it just an imitation? Qin Mo frowned a little. Brother Mo. Fujio took another step forward and held Qin Mo's wrist with her left hand. I'll explain to you later. It's fine if you want to hand me over to the police, but you have to remember to pay to bail me out. No matter who it was, they would not be able to bear being dragged by such a beautiful girl. Qin Mo had always believed that he would never feel pity. However, in the face of this guy who was still saying that he could redeem him with money if he wanted to, Qin Mo started to have selfish motives. His fingers tightened as he looked at Fujio from head to toe. Under his deep gaze were his thin lips that were inches away from hers. A young man dressed in female clothing. Only when he thought of these 5 words, it was as if something was out of his control. His blood surged with an indescribable heat. What's more, the guy in front of him was looking at him with watery eyes. He had long black hair, a white shirt, and the skin on the side of his face was like a fine white jade. Because he had just climbed through the ceiling, there was a faint blush on his face. No matter how he looked at it, he looked like a fairy. Just then the glass door rang again. Chapter 573. Lin Feng wasn't the only one who was stunned. Even the Supreme Alliance members behind him froze for a moment. Didn't Captain have something important to do here? Was this what Captain was talking about? Most importantly, Captain had never had a woman by his side. Lin Feng pushed White Tiger. White Tiger's face showed that he didn't know either. Wu Zhen was the last to enter. When she saw the scene in the convenience store, her smiling face couldn't help but sink. Brother Mo, what are you doing? Did you catch the suspect? Fu Jiu heard the commotion behind her and knew that many people had entered. In such a situation, if the Almighty was determined to expose her, she could only follow the police and think of a plan later. But before she could say anything, her left wrist was pulled back. Then, the familiar sandalwood scent of a man greeted her. Mo didn't look at anyone. He put one hand on the bar table behind Fu Jiu, and his whole body bent down. He didn't even care about the shock in her eyes as he kissed her deeply. That side profile was elegant and handsome. Through the convenience store's window, it was like admiring a romantic and aesthetically pleasing poster. Outside, the police sirens were still ringing. Fu Jiu couldn't concentrate anymore. Behind her was the vast night sky. Other than the gasps around her, there was also the sirens outside. Her beating heart and his cold lips intertwined. That kind of kiss seemed to belong to him. It was domineering, strong, irresistible, and extremely long-lasting. Lin Feng didn't know what to say anymore. His eyes widened and his fingers stretched out. Is this? What the F***ck was going on? The moment he arrived, he saw Captain torturing a single dog? Xuanhu didn't come back to his senses either. In fact, no one expected Mo to do such a thing. Only the Almighty would respect someone who lowered his head and kissed like there was no one else around. Wu Zhen's eyes were red, filled with endless jealousy. Fatty was still holding the laptop in his hands. He was in a daze. No, wait a minute, didn't Captain tell him to separate and lock onto the target? The scene in front of him made him dizzy. Fu Jiu was the one who was really dizzy. It was as if all the breath in her mouth had been stolen by the other party. Apart from the pleasant tobacco fragrance on the man's body, there was nothing else in her nostrils. His heart was beating faster because of the lack of oxygen. His fingers were kissed until the last bit of strength left his fingers. Only then did Mo let go of the person in front of him. With both hands behind Fu Jiu, he tilted his head slightly to the left and asked the person, "What's the matter?" Two very indifferent words. That low and deep voice, probably because of the kiss just now, still had a mesmerizing magnetism. He had a handsome side profile, deep eyes, and a matter-of-fact attitude. This made it hard for this group of people to reply. In the end, it was Lin Feng who was brave enough to jump forward and say, "Fatty said that you're waiting for him here. He has business to attend to." The others nodded, their gazes landing on Mo's face. However, Mo was very calm. He asked in a faint voice, "Isn't a date important?" "A date? Damn it. They must have misheard. Why would the captain go on a date with anyone?" At this moment, Lin Feng was even more curious about this girl, who hadn't spoken yet. Chapter 574. Unexpectedly, Mo was one step ahead of her. He reached out and pressed the back of her head, pressing her into his chest, burying her face in his embrace. That hug was filled with domineering indifference. He glanced over with an extremely cold gaze. "What? Are you here to disturb my date? How dare he?" Lin Feng wished he hadn't stuck his head out just now. He smiled and said, "Captain, you can continue. Just pretend that we don't exist." The tip of Fu Jiu's nose was pressed tightly against the man's chest. Underneath the windbreaker was a pure white cotton shirt. Her face was pressed against it and she could feel the temperature under the shirt. She originally thought that such a person's body temperature was on the cold side, and it wouldn't be comfortable to hug him. After experiencing it twice, Fu Jiu didn't think that way anymore. The Almighty's moderate body temperature and the tobacco scent on his body made it suitable to be brought home. The corners of his mouth curled up unconsciously. She knew that the Almighty was doing this to help her. His head moved forward involuntarily. What he meant was nothing more than a thank you. At this moment, the Almighty turned his head and pressed his thin lips against her ear. His voice was very deep. "If you don't want others to see you cross-dressing, be good." It seemed like the Almighty didn't receive her gratitude at all. But this time the Almighty had sacrificed a lot. If he hadn't said the word acting in advance, Fujio would have struggled out of the kiss. That uncontrollable numbness not only affected her thoughts, but it also drained her of all her energy. Fujio didn't know what to say. In the end, why did he have to kiss her? Hugging her was fine too. If it wasn't for the thing on her back, she might not even have been able to stand. Even now, her heartbeat had yet to return to normal. Also, what did Lin Feng mean by that? Continue watching her in the Almighty? She couldn't always be in this position with the Almighty, right? She reached out and tugged on Qin Mo's sleeve, lowering her voice. Brother Mo, let them go. Qin Mo held the back of Fujio's head, the corner of his lips curling up. In a voice that only the two of them could hear, he said, "It depends on your performance." What did he mean by watching her performance? Was he really going to be stared at for the whole night? Fujio was a little depressed. How long was he going to hold her? She knew Supreme Alliance all too well. Loves to gossip, especially the internal gossip of the members. If anyone had a girlfriend, they would want the whole company to know. After all, it was the monk battle team. I can understand. But if she was that girlfriend, Fujio's expression froze and she tugged at the Almighty's sleeve again. Qin Mo wasn't in a hurry. He was indeed not in a hurry. Putting aside all the questions he needed to ask, he felt that this posture was very good. I never knew Captain was so lovey-dovey. Lin Feng tilted his head and whispered into Yunhu's ear. Yunhu didn't comment, only feeling that the entire situation was a little strange. Wu Zhen, who was standing by the side, clenched her fists tightly. When it reached a certain level, she bit her lips harshly. Brother Mo, Director Huang is waiting for your news inside. Qin Mo lifted his lids, his expression indifferent. I'll only help if you follow the rules. What rules? Wu Zhen didn't know anything and couldn't care less. She only had eyes for the person in front of her. Why was it like this? She had been by his side for so many years. They were so close to having hope. Where did this woman come from? Wu Zhen's fingers sank into her palms, forming a series of crescent moons. I remember now.